Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some more practice problems on page 121 to continue on with this lesson to make sure that you understand it before going and doing it independently by yourself. So up at the top of the page, I want you to put your DP to remember the directions in which we go from decimal to a percent and a percent to a decimal. So it says write each percent as a decimal and as a mixed number or fraction in simplest form. So let's get started right away. We're going to take a look at number 1, and we have 300%. When we go from a percent to a decimal, remember a percent to our decimal means that we're going to be moving that decimal 2 places to the left. So here it is. There's my decimal 2 places to the left, gives me 3 5/10 as a decimal. When I have 3 5/10 as a fraction, I know that that needs to be simplified, so I'm going to divide each of these by 5, which equals 3 1/2. Okay? All right, let's take a look now at number 2. So I have 600%, and I know when I go from a percent to a decimal, my decimal's here, I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. So as a percent, as a decimal, it is just 6. So then how do I write that as a fraction? Well, it's 6/1, which is the same as 6. So both of those are totally acceptable. We're going to move on to number 3. I have 0 and 15/100%, and I'm turning it into a decimal. So a percent to a decimal, again, right here is a percent to a decimal. I'm going to move it 2 places to the left, 1, 2. I'm going to annex a 0, and there's my decimal, 0 and 15/10,000ths. 15/10,000ths, and I'm just going to write that exactly like I said it as a fraction. When I look at this, I know that I can divide each of these by 5, and when I divide each of them by 5, I end up getting 3, and then 10,000 divided by 5 gives me 2,000. Okay, so there's my answers for those. All right, let's take a look at some of these. We're going to take a look at some of these fractions that are benchmark fractions. So I know when I look at number 2, we're going to write each mixed number as a percent. So I'm going to first write it as a decimal, and then I'm going to take that decimal and turn it into a percent. And I know when I go, and we're not going to do this one, so we're going to do DP this way, move it to the left 2, and this way we're going to move it to the right 2. Okay, so we're going to first turn this fraction 2 1/2 into a decimal, and I know that I have 2 whole, and 1/2 I know is the same as 5/10. Now, that's a benchmark fraction, meaning that it's a fraction that should be fairly easy for us to work with, but if not, we can always come back here and find that equivalent fraction using our our tenths, our hundredths, our thousandths, and in this case, we can see that it is 5/10. All right, so now we have our decimal, and we are going to a percent. So if I'm going from a decimal to a percent, again, looking at that picture right here, I know that I need to move it 2 places to the right, 1, 2, which is going to give me 250%. Okay, we're going to take a look at 9 3/4. So 3/4 is easy because 3/4 is just like quarters, which means I have 9 75/100ths. Because I have 9 75/100ths, and I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the right, which gives me 975%. All right, 7 3/10. We're going to write it just like a fraction, or just like a decimal. 7 3/10. And because I'm going from a decimal to a percent, we're going to move it 2 places to the right, 1, 2, and I'm going to slap a percent sign on, and that gives me 730%. Okay, now let's take a look at couple of these down here. Let's take a look at this. We're going to go from each decimal to a percent. Well, this is like what we did up here when we moved all these to percent. So 8 5/10, a decimal. I'm going to go ahead and circle this right here again so that we use this. Okay, a decimal to a percent means that we are going to move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2. Annex a 0, 850%. 1, 2 for 2 and 6400ths gives me 264%. 1, 2 gives me 0 and 9/10%. So less than 1. That one's less than 1 whole percent because there's no whole number in front of that decimal. And then here, 1, 2 gives me 0 and 3400%. Again, that is less than 1. Okay, so all of these examples you should have written down on your paper with work, not just the answer, but with work so that you can go and look at it while you are working through your homework. I'm going to go ahead and stop. We're done with today. You're going to go ahead and get into your homework.